Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. I had been working at Zenith Solutions for almost 5 years. The company had existed for around 15 years before I joined them. During my time there, Zenith grew to become the top provider of cloud-based data analytics solutions in the region, capturing over 75% of the market share. It was a tight-knit team of around 15 employees. I genuinely enjoyed my role and found the skills I acquired to be incredibly valuable. I loved my colleagues, and the clients we served were fantastic. During my biannual reviews with Alex, the CEO, I consistently received perfect scores with no areas for improvement highlighted. I excelled at every aspect of my job. I oversaw company operations, HR and payroll, customer service, marketing, employee management, scheduling, training for both staff and clients, and numerous other responsibilities. I could seamlessly step into any role if a teammate was out sick or on vacation. In the fall of 2022, when Alex handed out our annual bonuses, mine was noticeably smaller than my teammates, despite being more substantial than previous years. I inquired, "Alex, are the bonus amounts tied to our performance ratings, and if so, what could I have done to earn a higher bonus?" Alex bluntly replied, "No, the bonuses aren't performance-based. You're just more replaceable than the others." Stunned, I simply responded, "Oh, okay," and proceeded to process the bonus payments before heading to lunch. I called my wife Sarah, seeking her wise counsel. While I was upset, I didn't want to make any rash decisions. Sarah, an astute businesswoman who has served on executive teams and advisory boards for over 2 decades, has an uncanny ability to foresee potential outcomes and ramifications. We decided to use our upcoming vacation to clear our minds, relax, and carefully evaluate the best course of action. I worked as usual for the next 2 days before leaving for our trip. During that time away, we explored various scenarios, consulted experts, and weighed the pros and cons. Ultimately, I decided to resign from Zenith upon our return, providing 2 weeks' notice. However, in a fit of rage, Alex immediately terminated my employment, an outcome we had anticipated and prepared for. Within the following weeks, I established a competing firm, Summit Analytics, offering similar services but with greater customization, higher quality, and superior results. These were enhancements I had proposed at Zenith numerous times, but Alex had dismissed my ideas outright. I maintained contact with a few former colleagues, though we never discussed Zenith's day-to-day operations. They would occasionally vent their frustrations to me, and I listened without comment. From their accounts and online reviews, it was clear that service quality and workplace morale had plummeted since my departure. To fill the void I left, Zenith had hired 2 full-time employees and 1 part-timer while outsourcing HR and payroll functions. Summit Analytics rapidly gained traction, and within 3 months I was able to hire several of my former teammates, the cream of the crop at Zenith. They seamlessly transitioned, requiring minimal training. As Summit's offerings surpassed Zenith's in quality, more clients flocked to us, leaving Zenith with virtually no incoming work. In a matter of months, Zenith went from being the region's top data analytics provider to a non-entity. Recently, I learned that Alex is actively seeking employment. In fact, he applied for a position at Sarah's company over the weekend. Sarah firmly stated, "No way I'm letting you interview him," only to surprise him with you as the interviewer asking, "How replaceable am I now?" She's absolutely right. That would be unprofessional. The moral of the story is simple. Never tell your employees they're replaceable, or they might just create a superior competing business, poach your top talent and clients, leaving you with no company to sell and forcing you to start over, working for someone else. Turns out, it was your company that was replaceable, not me. The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived on my family's land for as long as I can remember. My grandparents homesteaded the property over 50 years ago, and it's been passed down ever since. I always loved the simplicity of country living. Waking up to the sounds of birds chirping, sipping coffee on the porch while watching the sunrise, taking leisurely strolls down dusty gravel roads. When I inherited the land, I decided to build myself a little cabin right near the creek. It wasn't anything fancy, just a simple 1-bedroom place I could call my own. I enjoyed the privacy and solitude. My closest neighbor was old Joe, who lived a mile up the road. He was a kind widower who always brought over homemade apple pies. Other than Joe, it was just me and nature. That all changed when a new housing development cropped up just a quarter-mile from my property. I wasn't thrilled about the idea of a big suburban neighborhood so close, but I figured as long as they left me alone, I could tolerate it. Oh, how wrong I was. Shortly after the first few families moved in, I got a knock on my door from an uptight woman named Linda. She introduced herself as the president of the brand new Homeowners Association, or Homeowner Association as she called it. Linda went on and on about how exciting it was to have an official homeowner association now, and how it would really take the community to the next level. I politely told her I wasn't interested in joining. Well, Linda did not take kindly to that. She insisted the homeowner association was mandatory for all homeowners in the area, even those like myself who lived on private, undeveloped land outside the neighborhood proper. I corrected her and said my property was not part of the homeowner association jurisdiction. I could tell Linda was irritated, but she didn't press the issue further. I figured that was the end of it. Again, I was wrong. A few weeks later, I awoke to the loud rumbling of heavy machinery off in the distance. I peered out my window to see bulldozers and construction equipment rolling down the road toward my property. My first thought was maybe they took a wrong turn. But as I stepped outside, I realized to my horror that the machines were turning onto my land. I rushed over yelling for them to stop. The foreman looked at me confused and said this was the plot for the new model home they were building. Model home on my family's century-old homestead? Absolutely not. Just then, Linda herself showed up waving around some paperwork. She claimed to have permits to build her dream home right there on my land. I was fuming. How dare she seize land that she had no claim to? When I demanded an explanation, she just smirked and said that since I refused to join the homeowner association, she was forced to take more drastic measures. Apparently, she had pulled some strings with her buddy, the city planner, to get approval to annex my property for new development. According to her, this new model home needed to be built to convince more buyers to move into the neighborhood. And as homeowner association president, she graciously decided her luxury house was the perfect fit. I was seeing red. Without thinking, I hopped onto the bulldozer while the driver was away and drove it right across the foundation they had started digging. The foreman started yelling, but I didn't care. Linda turned pale and shrieked about how I was destroying her property. I yelled over the bulldozer that this wasn't her land and she had better get her equipment off before I plowed that down too. Linda tried calling the police, but I was 100% within my rights to remove trespassers. The cops explained to her that she had no legal claim to build anything on my private property without my explicit permission. She tried to argue that the permits she got should supersede my say, but the county records clearly showed my family owned the land free and clear. The permits ended up being fraudulent. Linda's buddy rushed them through without proper review as a personal favor to her. He ended up getting fired over the whole fiasco. With no leg to stand on, Linda had no choice but to leave with her proverbial tail between her legs. She was absolutely fuming that her little scheme failed. Before she left, she threatened to sue me for destruction of property, make my life a living hell, ruin my finances and reputation, etc., etc. I told her to go right ahead and that I'd see her in court, and see her in court I did. Linda followed through with a bogus lawsuit against me. I'm sure she expected me to cave and beg for mercy, but I stood my ground. With truth and justice on my side, I filed a counterclaim for trespassing and unauthorized construction on my land. The judge ended up dropping all of Linda's trumped-up charges against me and ordered her to pay damages for the unlawful encroachment and attempted theft of my property. On top of the court costs, she got slapped with a hefty fine that I'm sure wiped the smug grin off her face real quick. Not only that, but the Homeowner Association Board finally saw Linda's true colors and stripped her of the presidency. Last I heard, she moved away in shame after being ostracized by the whole community. As for me, the court issued a restraining order prohibiting Linda or any homeowner association board members from stepping foot on my land ever again. I also worked with my lawyer to file paperwork preemptively protecting my property from any future seizure or loophole tricks. Never again will I risk someone trying to claim what's rightfully mine. It may have been months of stress and ridiculous legal expenses, but in the end, justice prevailed. I'm thankful to have retained ownership of my family's legacy on this beautiful piece of land. My quiet country life has returned to normal and I can once again enjoy the simplicity and serenity of nature. No more disruptive construction noise or entitled Karens to contend with. I just might have to head over to Joe's this weekend for a slice of that apple pie to celebrate this hard-won victory. The next one is a petty revenge story. About 3 weeks ago, I ordered this dress online, which I found really cute through an Instagram page. I received the dress and I really liked it. However, they didn't even send it in my size. It was about 3 sizes down from my size. I texted the page immediately after finding out it was smaller than what I ordered. They said that they only take returns when the item is checked in front of the delivery man, so that if any fault is found with the product, the delivery man can return it to the seller. And they really can't do much if the delivery man already left the place. In my apartment complex, delivery men are not allowed in the building, due to some recent crimes in my area. So I couldn't check the parcel right when I received it. I told them that, and they responded that they would initiate an exchange and just need a couple days. Days go by, and I text them several times over the course of 3 weeks. I constantly text them and they don't reply. I call them on the number they provided, but it's invalid. And even when I did manage to get another number, they hung up on me when I told them about my issue. I realized they were not going to exchange it as it doesn't benefit them in any way, rather waste their resources. But I wasn't the one to let my money to go waste, and plus, I liked the quality of the dress. I devised a plan. Now my plan was to place an order again for the exact same dress, and this time he'll exchange 2 dresses and just tell the delivery man that the dress didn't fit and return the smaller dress. My plan was almost perfect, but there was still a possibility that they might mess up again. Also, it was cash on delivery, so I wouldn't lose money in this way since I was not going to keep the dress. I placed another order through their Instagram page with my other account. But this time, I used the address of my neighboring building and used my other number. I placed the order with my size, and there was a big chance that they might duck up and give me the wrong size again, but I just had to take a chance. They confirmed my order. When the delivery man arrived, I told him to wait downstairs till I try it on. I exchanged the dresses and told the delivery man that they had sent me the wrong size and I'd like to return that. My plan worked and I got the dress in my size. I blocked them from both my accounts and unsent any personal information I sent them in DMs. I'm low-key proud of it, and I feel like it was just a big duck you from my side. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Almost 10 years ago, I worked at a company where my department analyzed survey and secondary data, compiling it into handbooks each quarter. After 6 months of joining the department, my manager, who joined us 2 months after me, reorganized our tasks in an attempt to improve our efficiency. This manager was promoted internally and was notorious for kissing up to management. He was technically not qualified for the promotion due to a different background required for our department, but one of the C-suite members liked him a lot. He did have some expertise in other areas, but generally had an unpleasant personality, so many people in the company didn't like him much. Along with 3 new projects, I was assigned the handbook task for the first time. The meeting was in February, so my first handbook would be for that year's Q1. In the meeting, I also asked my colleague who had managed the project for 4 years to explain the usual timeline. She said it took 6 months, a time frame agreed upon by management for years, considering the person handling it would also have other important projects. This means for Q1 data, the printed copies of the handbook need to be ready by 30th of September. The 6-month period includes collecting the analysis from survey managers, and for secondary data, I would have to contact the data owner and do the analysis myself. I also have to work closely with the outsourced company that does the design and printing. I carried out the handbook project smoothly, along with my other tasks, and by late July, the only thing left for me to do was to proofread the content. The next procedure required me, my manager, and the designer to review and finalize every page before sending it to the unit head for approval. Printing and delivery take about 2-3 weeks, so we aim to submit the design by mid-August and confirm the final version for printing by the last week of August. However, on the last Friday of July, a whole 2 weeks before our target timeline to send the design to the unit head, this conversation happened. Manager, OP, I need you to finalize everything today because we are sending the design to the unit head on Monday. Me. Next Monday? Why? We have 2 weeks. Manager. Well, the unit head wants to see some changes around here, so I thought we could speed up the publication of this handbook to start. I told the unit head we would send the design to her on Monday. Me. Okay, you could have discussed this with me first. I mean, the proofreading is almost done. I can get it done by today, but we still need to sit down with the designer to finalize and sign off. The appointment is in a week. Manager. Can you do it tomorrow? Go ask the designer. Now, it was not normal in our company to come to the office and work on weekend. And of course, I already had a plan for that weekend, so this was really annoying to me. At least I knew that the designer would have no issue moving it to the next day because he is very cooperative. Me. I can try, but tomorrow is Saturday. I'm not sure if he can make it. And are you sure we want to rush this? Because even if we meet the designer tomorrow, the hard copy will be delivered just 2 weeks earlier than the normal deadline. Is it that significant? Manager, yes. Just go ask the designer now. So, I called the designer, and as expected, he had no problem meeting on Saturday. Me. Mr. Manager, the designer is okay to meet tomorrow. Is 10 a.m. okay with you? Manager, huh? Puzzled look. Me, you also need to be there for the sign-off. Manager, I do. Me, yes, you literally need to sign off on the final version to send to the unit head. It's the normal procedure. TBH, he didn't need to be there aside from following procedure. He had already seen the design a few times and likely wouldn't have contributed much to the meeting. I would have loved for him not to be there anyway. But at that point, I was quite excited to make him come to the office on the weekend when he obviously didn't realize he also had to be there with the designer. Manager, I can't tomorrow, I'm going somewhere until Sunday. Me, well, if you want to send this to the unit head on Monday, then you have to be here tomorrow. Manager, sigh. Let me get back to you. About half an hour later, he came up to me with the sourest face ever. 10 a.m. tomorrow is fine, and walked away. I'm guessing he must have pissed off someone when he had to cancel his weekend plan. So the next day he came in 1 hour late, not smiling at all, and was rude to the designer and me. He was really unhappy to be in the office on that day, but we got it done by 1 p.m. The following week, the story of how I made my manager come to work on Saturday was told around the company. Apparently, the plan that he had for the weekend was a group trip with some of his buddies who also worked in the company, and he had to make new arrangements to get to the place by himself and arrived late. A lot of people thought it was really funny, including the unit head and some of his buddies, and laughed at the image of him walking into the office on Saturday for some trivial yet necessary work. Nevertheless, the next 2 years that I worked on the handbook, he never promised anyone to have the handbook ready before the 6-month timeline. The next one is an entitled people story. So, I mentioned in my earlier post that I had a few stories about Todd, my next-door neighbor, who asked for a copy of my grandma's will because he was certain she left him something. That was my first encounter with Todd. This is the last known encounter with Todd, but it was my neighbor's encounter, not mine. Todd had lived in his house for about 10 years before I moved next door. His house was in foreclosure when I arrived, and a year later, he was gone. To say the entire street was relieved is an understatement. There may have been a parade. An investor bought the house for a ridiculous amount and flipped it. The new owner didn't do much to the house after he moved in. He was a great neighbor, and when he passed away, we all missed him. The next owners, current owners, moved in and started really renovating the place. When the house was initially flipped, everything they did was simply cosmetic. These houses were built in the 50s, so a lot of things were seriously outdated. Plumbing had to be redone, electrical had to be redone, kitchen wasn't remodeled correctly and had to be gutted. These poor people are pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into this house, but they love the house and the neighborhood, so it's all worth it to them. The new family had begun making very obvious changes to the house. First, they took out a planter's bed attached to the house and are working towards a more natural landscape. We live in a very desert climate, so keeping grass can be kind of hard on the water bill. The next thing they did was start taking down a humongous palm tree that was literally planted in the middle of their 3-car driveway. Todd initially had a 1-car driveway. He planted the tree and then paved around it to make the driveway bigger. But by now, it had grown so big that you could only fit 1 car comfortably, and a 2nd car had to be partially on the yard. Beginning work on that tree brought Todd out from under his rock. From what I understand, Todd had actually moved back to the state about a year or so after he left and is currently living with his father just a few blocks away. One day, he knocked on their door and demanded to know why they were taking down his tree. The wife, let's go with Amanda, was flabbergasted. I had told her Todd's stories here and there, and she said she was simultaneously starstruck and confused as hell. He repeated his demand of knowing why they were cutting down his tree. He said they could not cut that tree down, it's his. He planted it when he first moved in, and he did not give them permission to cut it down. He then asked about the basketball hoop, which was also installed in the driveway. She said that was coming down too. He was angry. His kids played with that hoop. They grew up with it. Why would they take down a perfectly good basketball hoop and a perfectly healthy tree, especially when they didn't have permission? It seems Todd was under the impression that even if the house was no longer his, certain things around the house were. The tree, the basketball hoop, and the blocks from the planter. He didn't want those things. But he fully expected to be asked for his permission before making changes to those things, and he made it clear he would not give it, because they were his, and he wanted them left right where they were. At some point, Amanda's brain kicked in. And Amanda is spiteful as all get out. She gave Todd a few choice words and told him to get off her property. That if he wanted his tree, he could haul it to own house on the back of his bicycle for all she cared, but it was coming down. And if she saw him on her property again, he was going to meet her 3 dogs, and they loved the taste of trespassers. When the tree came down and before they got the wood hauled off, they set the pile at the corner of the street with a great big sign that said Todd's Tree. Amanda says she has not seen him since, and I have yet to see him, so I think all is peaceful in the neighborhood again. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.